Thank you all so much for coming and welcome. I'm very excited that Joe Luehmann, is that correct? Okay, because I always say like Luehmann so I can spell it, who is the Senior Director of Development and Alumni Relations, accepted the invitation to be with us today. I don't know if you follow her on social media, but she is very well known and sought after. For speaker, she's a writer, she's an educator. Her pronouns are she and they. She was in an evangelical setting, and after years of that ministry, which was very successful also, she created Do Better Church to support survivors of church abuse and to help communities pursue justice-rooted transformations. She talks a lot about dismantling systems of white supremacy, patriarchy, and religious harm. She's at Union Theological Seminary now, and I am so excited again to have her here at Chapel. Welcome.
Oh, that was so nice. Thank you. Thank you for having me. Like Sandra said, I did work inside of evangelical churches for a long time, and my training was inside of evangelical spaces and some Catholic spaces as well. But today I want to talk a little bit about the work that I do with people that have religious trauma and the work that actually has shaped me and changed me. And it's all about holding liberation and how I had to learn to be able to hold liberation. I had the knowledge in my head. I was reading and understanding and learning, and I was able to know why liberation was important. But once I found myself against walls or in different settings, I couldn't hold to those values, and I had to learn why, because I judged myself for a long time for that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about neuroscience and the things that I had to learn in order to be able to hold liberation, and then we're going to do a short little exercise where we're going to talk about our values. And I don't know if many of you have done value work, but this is a practice that I have. It's a spiritual practice for me. So every year during Christmas, I don't like Christmas, but I do like these. My children and I sit down and discuss our values, the values that we had discussed the prior year, and then we say, do those values still align? Do they not align? And then what are the values that we're going to have for the next year? And we put them on our fridge because they are the only way that we can hold each other accountable. If we start with, these are our values, so we can hold ourselves to what we agreed upon. So that being said, there are three anchors that I believe help us hold liberation. One is clarity, that level of clarity that I was just sharing, and being able to see reality without distortion. Like, how do I had to sit down inside the evangelical church and get to a place where I had to admit to myself, this is really toxic theology, and this is really harmful, not just for me, but for people around me. And seeing with clarity is not easy, but it's the first anchor to be able to hold liberation for me. And then there is courage, which is staying with discomfort, staying with that discomfort when you feel, that your values and the way that you're acting do not match. Staying there and questioning it instead of letting your brain and your nervous system rush to get over it. And then the last one is becoming, which is choosing integration of those experiences over the certainty of what you have right now. So let me talk about the backfire effect. This was a really helpful thing to learn, which is the backfire effect is when a truth challenges your identity, something that you hold very dear to you, that your brain sees as part of who you are, then your brain is going to interpret that as a threat. So if I challenge that identity, that's something that you hold really tightly as something good, then your brain is not going to be able to receive anything that I'm saying. Your brain is going to, the amygdala is going to just send all of these alarm bells to your brain, and then your prefrontal cortex is going to shut down, and you're not listening to me anymore. It's over. So it doesn't matter what your values are or not are. If the backfire effect is happening and you're not cognizant of that and aware, you might just cross over to where you are not holding your integrity because it's not character, it's biology. And then we have the reticular activating system. I'm sure that most of you have already heard about these things, but just to make sure that we're all speaking about the same thing, I wanted to mention them briefly. And the reticular activating system is like a colander in your brain that out of 11 million bits of information that you're receiving in a day, I don't remember how much is, 11 million bits of information, it filters it down to about 40. So everything that is happening right now around you, your body, your nervous system is capturing a ridiculous amount of information, but because that's too overwhelming for your brain is going to filter it down to 40, about 40. And that information is shaped by your trauma, by your beliefs, by who you are, by the circumstances, by your hunger, if you're cold, if you're not cold. So the information, your brain is making sure that you survive. The job of your brain is not to tell you the truth. The job of your brain is to keep you alive. And when you're aware of that, then you're able to receive information a little bit differently. That's helpful for us because then we know that avoidance or denial or rigidity or all of those ways in which we've been told that we don't have the character or that we see ourselves lying, gaslighting, denying. It's not so much that we have a character issue. It could be a character issue. It could be a part of that. It could become that. But more importantly, there is a biological reason why we are not able to hold liberation in our bodies. There is a threat. There is something that is not letting us feel safe enough to challenge ourselves. So we're going to do a little values reflection. So I'm going to just share this list with you. This is from the Berkeley Wellbeing Institute. There are a lot of different value lists all over the internet. I chose this one because it was easy to edit, to be honest. So not all values are here. This will just give you an idea of some values, and maybe you don't need the list and you already have a value, like you already know what a value is. And then there's going to be 3 prompts, one for clarity, one for courage, and one for becoming. So the clarity one, and then I'll give you these, is what value do you hold most fiercely? What is the value that is most important to you when you're at your best? When you are doing work that lights you up, that excites you, when you are at your absolute best, or when you're with people that just light you up, what is the value that you hold most fiercely in that moment? And we'll just take a couple of minutes for that, and I'll pass these if they are helpful. Here, maybe more. There are a lot. And we will write something, so if you want to. No, you're fine. It is.
Microphone makes it much harder to
Yeah. We could be hear each other. Yeah. What value do you hold most fiercely when you're at your best? At your best. I mean, you can choose more later because we don't have time for it. I'll go ahead and share a couple things and then give you the second prompt. But so liberation collapses. We love to talk about liberation out there, right? The big movements of liberation, the historical movements. We can talk about all those things. And I was sitting with 8 alumni that are over 80 yesterday. and they were sharing some of the things that they've done, and it's incredible, like impressive. It's just so, they were talking about what they felt when they were marching at certain iconic marches and doing incredible work. And when we think about liberation, that's what we think of, right? Getting rights and all of that. But liberation has to exist within us first before it can exist around us. Otherwise, our nervous system will not be able to hold it when things get hard and difficult. And I think that that's part of what we're seeing socially right now. A lot of young people that are feeling, and by young I mean people my age and under, so not that young, but youngish, that are feeling so discouraged by the rise of authoritarianism because our nervous systems we're not ready for backlash. And we knew it was coming. Anybody that has studied history has known that when there is advancement in the world of social justice, there is always backlash. And we had a lot of things happen in the early 2000s and the mid 2000s that would cause the kind of backlash that we're seeing right now. And because our nervous systems couldn't hold it, there were a lot of coalitions and there was a lot of work that has started to collapse in the last couple of years. But then there is other work that is emerging. So liberation collapses when our values cannot match our lived experience. When our values of I want to care for the poor, I want to do all of these things cannot match our lived experience, liberation collapses there. And I want to tell you a story of why it's important to know what your values are and to have them really clear. So I have 4 kids, and my oldest is 13 years old, and she asked me if she could go to New York earlier this month. They had half days because they were doing some testing. I don't understand American school system. And I said, okay, you can go to New York with your friends. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to organize. At her age, I was walking around Bogota, Colombia with my sister. So I figured, New York City, it's fine. So I gave her all the things, and then I gave her a credit card. She has had a debit card that we have a lot of specifications for since she was 11 in 6th grade. But then now she has this credit card for emergencies. I thought if she needs anything and she's in the middle of New York City, I want to make sure that she can save herself in case I'm at work and I can't answer, whatever. And I explained, you cannot use this credit card, and this is what constitutes an emergency, all of these things. So I look at my credit cards, I check everything, I make sure everything is paid on the 15th of every month. So I did that this weekend, and then there were a whole bunch of charges on her credit card. And because our top value in our family is curiosity this year, anyways, it's curiosity, I wanted to kill her. But the first thing I did was, okay, what would a curious person do with this information? And I thought asking her, right? Maybe she lost her card. Maybe somebody took it. Maybe a friend that took it, whatever. So I said, Antonella, do you have your card? And she said, which card? And so I already knew that she knew what was happening. And so I didn't even, because she didn't meet me with curiosity. I met her with curiosity, but she tried to trick me. I said, there are a lot of charges, and we need to talk about it. So you're not in trouble, but this is serious, and we'll talk when you get home. And then immediately she said, Mommy, I'm so sorry. And she told me that she really was hungry when she was in New York, and then her friends wanted to go shopping, and she didn't want to be left out. And anyways, she spent $200. So we'll talk about it, and then she's going to have to repair, because the values that we have, she didn't hold them, but I did. In spite of the fact that it was really hard, and I just wanted to punish her, and I wanted to be really angry with her. But punishment is not a value. We actually don't believe in punishment. But the importance of her expectations and my expectations were set when we decided what our values were. But I also have to recognize the places and the times where holding those values is really hard. So that's the second part of the exercise. With the value that you hold most fiercely, can you think of where in your life or at work is it hard to live by that value? What happens? What kind of experiences happen around you that triggers defensiveness, that triggers avoidance, that triggers denial? When is it hard for your nervous system to hold that value? If you want to go a little deeper on that, you can even name the specific beliefs, the specific stories, the specific fears that rise inside of you, even the specific relationships. Sometimes, I'll give you one example. The person that I am when I go visit my family in Colombia is very different than the person that lives here, because it's hard to hold to some values there. That's why I can't live there. I don't want to live there, because there are some values that it's too hard to hold them there. And the goal is not to fix that, but just to know that, to be aware of that. So even to name down to the relationships. What are relationships that make it hard for you to be able to hold? It could be because there's trauma there, whatever the reason, doesn't matter. But being aware what fears, what stories, what relationships make it hard for you to hold to that value. Going back to the story of my daughter, if I tell you that story out of context, you would think that I'm a great mother. But I used to have a stick when she was a little kid, like a toddler kid. I used to have a stick that had a Bible verse on it, and we would spank her with it calmly, because then it was loving. We would tell her that it was a way of correcting her, that we were doing it because we loved her, because I was raised that way. I was raised with spankings out of love. And it was really difficult for me to sit with the fact that I was so afraid of my child turning out to be something that wasn't even a possibility because she didn't want to go to bed, that I was reenacting the exact same harm that had been done to me. And now I could see it. And I remember what my body felt when my mom would spank. My dad never did, but my mom spanked me. And I remember what my body, I never felt like she loved me. It never felt like she cared about me. It never felt like she was curious about what had happened, or why I got in trouble, or why I spilled something. And so I couldn't parent that way anymore. I couldn't continue to do the same thing because I didn't want my child to not feel loved. If curiosity and love and care were values that I was telling her we cared about, I needed her body to be able to feel that with me. And to this day, she's 13. I haven't spanked her since she was 2 years old. And to this day, and she doesn't remember, but she tells me like, well, you used to spank me. Like, she uses it against me. I think she's gonna do that for the rest of her life. But it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of conversations, and it took a lot of, and I'm not saying that to brag, I'm just saying that's the work that we have to do every day. So that takes us to the third part, which is becoming. And that is what would need to shift inside of you for this value to become a consistent practice. What needs to happen for everything that triggers inside of you, or for all of these things that cause you to not be able to have the courage to stand by your value? What do you need to do to make sure that you're safer, to be able to let your nervous system know we're fine holding on to this value, even when this fear arises, even when this story starts playing in our head, even when we feel backed against the wall, even when I'm in front of my mother, that might activate all of these stories inside of me. What do you need to do in your life? What needs to shift so that you have more expansion in your life, so you can hold to it without your nervous system freaking out? So we'll take a few minutes to write about that. I want to make sure I leave some time in case that there are any comments, but I learned that becoming the kind of person who can hold liberation, becoming the kind of person that can care deeply and do something about these things sometimes doesn't really require for us. I don't go to marches, for instance. They are not good for me. They are not good for my nervous system. I don't feel well in them. I am paranoid the whole time, and it's just not good for me. But I do all these other little things and big things and, in between things. But I think that the most important thing that we can do for liberation is that internal work, that teaching our nervous system to hold liberation while the world doesn't. And it's hard work. It's hard work to be able to foster enough safety in some spaces in our lives where we can hold liberation, even though the world is screaming at us oppression, and we are experiencing it in our bodies and in the bodies of people that we care about so much. So sometimes when I don't know what to do and it feels so overwhelming, I remember that I can do these, that I can stop and remember my values and remember to hold them and help my nervous system to hold to that. And it's forever work, because sometimes I want to punish my children and sometimes I do, and I have to apologize to them, and sometimes I miss it, and my nervous system gets the best of me because it wants to protect me, not because I have a flaw. And then I'm able to meet myself with the same curiosity that I'm extending everybody else, and then I am able to repair whatever harm I've caused. But if we are not able to live that out in our nervous system, then we have to create internal, smaller worlds where that's possible, so that it can continue to have ripple effects and grow and expand. This is my life experiment, by the way. I'm raising children in a way I've never seen anybody raise children the way that I'm doing it. I'm inventing a new way of democratizing power in my house with my 6-year-old and my 13-year-old. And we'll see what kind of nervous system they grow up to have. We could try these instead of trying oppression and harm. And I think we can do it at every possible scale, in our homes, in our relationships, in our marriages, with our partners, with our friends. And see, if we create that kind of safety with one another, and if we create that kind of democratized power with one another, then what will happen in 5 years? What kind of things will our bodies be able to hold that they couldn't hold before? So I don't pray anymore, but I do these kind of affirmations that it's my hope for everybody. So may our clarity be stronger than our denial. May our courage expand our capacity for truth, and may our becoming give birth to liberation in us and through us every single day. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And then I think we have a couple of minutes, maybe if anybody wants to make any comments or has any thoughts.
Anybody have questions or comments? I want to thank you for being so vulnerable. I know as a mom, it's difficult to share, what happens at home and the mistakes. I know a lot of people, or the things that we feel are mistakes, and just share. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for sharing about your personal story. It's an inspiration, and talking about your children and speaking about clarity and courage. It was very inspiring. So thank you for your offering, Joe. Thank you.
The length of the list reminded me that it takes work to choose what value is going to be yours and that you're going to hold on to, and that you want to work on building a plan of resilience when that value is challenged. So I was actually struck by the very first part of the exercise, just trying to circle one that I thought was going to be the one that I'd work through. So, yeah.